Okay, real quick before we begin, I just want to say that BlackJupiter has hit 1,000 subscribers. Everyone here is just blown away by the support. We cannot stress enough how grateful we are. Just like, wow. Anyway, anyone who watches this video and likes it gets a free slice of our celebration cake. Pinky promise. You can't break a pinky promise. Now, let's talk some hypothetical anime. I'm Agent Random, what's up? Don't answer that, I can't hear you. Back in 2020, when The World Ends With You seemed like it was going to be a permanent resident of the Square Enix graveyard, fans at the time were all surprised to see the announcement of an anime adaptation of the original game. Dubbed The World Ends With You the Animation, this show sought to revitalize the series, and revitalize the series it did. Because not long after the anime's announcement, we also got the announcement of a sequel to that original game titled Neo: The World Ends With You. So what if in the near future we see Neo meet the same fate that its older brother did? No, not an iPhone port, I mean its own anime adaptation. What if Square made Neo: The World Ends With You the animation? This video contains spoilers for the whole series. If that's a problem, feel free to click off now. I promise I won't get too lonely. The first thing to address is the likelihood of this project even starting up. After Square Enix released their financial report stating that Neo underperformed, there's been a bit of a consensus that the World Ends With You series is checking itself into the graveyard once again. But I'm not so sure that's actually the case. In a previous and definitely not controversial video, I stated that Square really has no good reason to consider this game a failure. But they do, and there's not really much I can say to change that. Side note, did y'all hear that Guardians of the Galaxy also underperformed? Square really does not know how to manage their expectations, huh? Anyway, assuming that Neo itself really did flop, I find it just a little odd that this game kinda refuses to die. Even just last month, the game still received things on Twitter like promotional pushes for sales and official Valentine's Day cards. This one's my favorite, it has a Susakichi selfie. And maybe this is just me, but I feel like all of that would be a bit of a waste of time for the marketing team if Square Enix was really done with the series. Additionally, Neo itself is still getting patches. Nothing substantial obviously, just fixing up some common softlocks and for some reason not fixing the fact that Killer Remix doesn't actually raise drop rate in the second Mr. Mew fights. If you've tried to get all the Black Hat pins, you know exactly how painful the item drop for ultimate difficulty on this fight is. But the fact that they still care to touch up the game when it really has no right to still be on life support gives me the vibe that Square might still have more plans for The World Ends With You. Also, I'm shoehorning this into the script because it literally happened while I was writing it, but Square recently went out of their way to release all of Neo's spoiler characters from spoiler jail by officially revealing them on Twitter and giving them all pages on the game's website. Why do this? Like, okay, you might sell a handful more copies now that Joshua's pretty face is on the website, but I really don't see a point in lifting the spoiler ban off the cast if the series is really dead. Like, really, did anyone expect the game to get any kind of support like this so far after release? But maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. A couple post-release patches and Valentine's cards are far from a promise that we'll get an anime. But what's much harder to write off is the success of the first anime season. Even though its reviews were a little low, the anime continues to be a success long after its original run. The merch for it just won't stop, and also won't ever reach my house. Like, I pre-ordered Joshua a while ago, and he's not here. This part's not in the script. I just felt like ranting about my Joshua figure not being here yet. And the anime itself has gotten not one, not two, but 3 reruns, which is just uncanny for a smaller show like this. The animation is a clear and undeniable success, and it would be stupid for them to not follow it up with an adaptation of the story's sequel. Square seems to really like the idea of anime adaptations recently, especially with the announcement of that Nier anime. It seems pretty likely that The World Ends With You will eventually come back for more anime action. Okay, so Neo: The World Ends With You, the animation, hypothetically exists now. Yay. Now we just have to wait for Square to hopefully... Huh? Oh, one sec. Hello? Random speaking.
Random, this is Square Enix itself.
Oh, no way! Did you finally get my emails regarding a 10-pin slammer patch for Neo?
No, our scanners have detected that you were talking about a Neo TWEWY anime.
You put money into building technology that can detect when people talk about this very specific topic?
Yes, in fact, it's where our budget went for marketing Neo at E3 last year went.
That clears up a couple things, actually.
So because you are the first person to ever talk about a hypothetical Neo TWEWY anime, we have decided specifically to hypothetically place you in charge of this entire hypothetical project.
Wait, I'm the first person to ever talk about this? Mr. Enix, that does not sound right.
Your work starts immediately.
Ooh, wait, can I make my Fred is secretly Hanekoma theory canon? Hello? He hung up, okay. Well, the first thing that I need to decide now that I'm the chosen one is the episode count. According to my sources, anime most commonly have episode counts of 12 or 24 per season. We're going to assume that my contract states that I'm required to use one of those episode counts or I can't make Fred is Hanekoma canon. Season 1 consisted of 12 episodes, but since that's like under 5 hours of content to tell the story for a 20-hour game, the end result had a lightning quick pace. The story was reworked in many places to accommodate this change in length, but no matter what you did, the show's writing just wasn't going to be anywhere near the level of the games. Neo is like twice the length of the original game, and while a lot more of that could probably be cut out, it would still probably be an even worse idea to cram it all into just 12 episodes. I don't want to rule out the possibility of possibly dividing it into 2 seasons, but Neo's story is divided into 3 weeks, so I think it would be a little awkward to have the first season end like partway through the second week, or put 2 weeks in one season with the next season only having 1 week. It would just be a mess. So that leaves us with our only good option being one season of 24 episodes. And actually, if you count the prologue and don't count Another Day, Neo has 24 chapters. And not all chapters are created equally in terms of length and importance, so they could easily merge 2 chapters into 1 episode and or spread a chapter across 2 episodes if need be. I think that the prologue and the first day could both totally be merged into a singular episode, and that the final chapter could be spread into 2 episodes, so that the resolution could be given a little more time to breathe, and so that they could even put in some post-game lore, like how Hanekoma and Joshua's conversation at the end of the first season covered that game's secret reports. As for the lore of the season itself, where would I slot it into the canon? The first season janked up the canon to a degree where I can't see it as entirely canon to the games. So do I keep all of that jankiness into the second season, or should I follow something closer to what's up in the games? Funnily enough though, no piece of World Ends With You media has ever perfectly shared continuity with the rest of the canon, so we can probably get away with changing a few things from the first season. Like changing the noise to now possess people in the real ground instead of the underground to be more like the games. Or we could even make it so that psychs are sourced from pins again like in the games. I do also want to briefly give attention to the characters that were brought back to life at the end of the first season. Soda, Now, and all members of the Death March are living once again. I would give them all cameos. If the team has no intention of using any of Death March's members again in the future, we can show a flashback of them getting erased prior to Neo's events or something. Maybe they sang a song about like how much Shiba sucks and he erased them, I don't know. Also, while we're at it, I'm reverting their anime name back to Death March instead of Death March, just for my own personal peace of mind. And actually, I do also want to give cameos to the rest of the OG cast that didn't get any attention to Neo. Yes, that means it's time for Teenage Shooter. But what about the Coffee Man? Sane Hanekoma makes no physical appearance whatsoever in Neo, and as such, I doubt I can shove him in here. Maybe in like a post-credit scene in the last episode of Square like really likes me. As for his Neo design, TWEWY Spain recently conducted an interview with the World Ends With You staff and straight up asked them if they had any concepts lying around of Neo Hanekoma. And in response, they dodged the question. So, just saying that if I go into the Square archives and find out that Fred ever had even a single connection to Hanekoma, you already know that's becoming canon real fast. As for another change, and I'm really only doing this just because I think that it would be really funny, I want to adapt a part of the Neo manga. The manga itself is really goofy. Like, if you thought that Neo itself already had too light of a tone, this manga takes it to a whole new level. But it does have this really fun cooking competition, and I want to see it animated. Like, just have it replace the Pig Day or one of the Scramble Slams. You don't need all 3. Look, I just want to see Shiba eat bean paste in 1080p 60 FPS, okay? Also, I'm making Neo's anime take place in 2022 instead of 2021. Using the 104 building in the first season as a reference, the first season most likely took place in 2019. To keep the 3-year gap from the games, I'm shifting Neo's place in the timeline by a year. But speaking of the gap between seasons, there's a ton of stuff that goes down in that time period. Primarily, A New Day. Final Remix's post-game edition is a pretty big tie-in to Neo. The first season didn't adapt it at all, so where are we telling this story? Well, Actually, I think for this anime, we can get by with not adapting it. Hear me out, just about all of A New Day's most important plot beats are repeated naturally in Neo's story. Of course, if you know what happened in A New Day, you'll have a little bit of a better idea as to what's going on in Neo, but you're definitely not lost without it. Like, yeah, we see Sho get revived in A New Day, but we can easily also learn that by seeing him be alive in Neo. I guess we wouldn't know that Coco is the one that revived him, but that piece of info really isn't all that relevant going into Neo's story, and Coco even re-reveals it anyway at the end of the story. And the same logic applies to pretty much the rest of the day. Also, by choosing not to adapt A New Day, we avoid some of the more problematic plot points that would most likely confuse people. Things like Coco's ability to control dissonance, or that one dumb line where Joshua says that he really doesn't care what happens to Neku. But A New Day isn't the only thing that went down in between games. There was also the story behind Shinjuku's inversion. If there weren't already any plans to adapt this into a playable format, then I'm taking the executive decision to give us a glimpse here. At least enough to cover the important info from the secret report, since I really don't think there's a good way to get that info otherwise. Specifically on week 3, day 5, when we dive into Sugumi's head. I want us to get a fun flashback sequence in her brain showing what went down with her and her brother. And of course, I'll be officially naming her brother Matsune. You're welcome. To get a better idea of the lessons that can be learned from Season 1, I took to Twitter, @AgentRandom by the way, to ask what sort of things people wish were done differently in the first season. Most comments were about things like pacing, which I already addressed by giving this season a longer episode count, or things that were pretty first season specific, like wishing that we saw 10-pin and flip phones. But a criticism that we can totally apply to this new season is with the combat. While flashy and whatever, there was a huge over-reliance on ending every fight with a fusion. Neo doesn't really have character-specific fusions to pull from like the first game, so I want us to get more creative with the fights. I also want to see more creative fight choreography when they are using other psychs. There's only so many times that you can watch Neku take an L after putting up a barrier. Let's move away from in-universe elements and talk about other aspects of the production. Firstly, the music. Look, I enjoyed a number of tracks from the first season's soundtrack, but I know that we were all at least a little disappointed to find out that only a small handful of songs from the actual game were making their way in. In my second season, Ishimoto is gonna be making special scores of way more in-game songs for the show. And maybe even a couple new vocalized songs too, because why not? For the credits theme, I don't see a reason to not ask Asuka to make another song. She seems to really like The World Ends With You since she made her own cover of Calling even after making Carpe Diem. I'd also like to see Ilya Kuvshinov return to make more art for this season. He's already made a little bit of fan art for Neo, and I'd love to see more from him. As for the opening, please, beg, borrow, or steal, we will right the countless wrongs of the first season. Teenage freaking City Riot is the opening. It was supposed to be the opening of the first season before it was changed literally like the day before it aired. Due to the situation surrounding its removal, the song didn't get released until just a few weeks ago. But now that it is released, surely it can get added to the second season. Please. This next part's probably a little bit out of the team's hands, but I'm gonna pretend like I have control over this too. Let's talk the dubbing. One, let's actually get it out at a reasonable time. It took them a freakish amount of time to get us the English dub for the first season, and I really can't imagine why, especially since Spanish and Portuguese dubs were done almost right away. Two, when Funimation did finally decide to quit stalling and dub it in English, they chose to pretty much recast everyone. Even though in Japan, they did manage to get back almost every single original voice, and they were pretty proud of it too. That was like a selling point. I'm sure it's much easier for Funimation to grab someone that they already have lying around the office and to break their way into Darby Vision to kidnap Aaron Span. But come on, guys. When Neku's original voice actor spent a year practically begging you on Twitter to cast him when you do your dub, not casting him really doesn't look the best. Wow, I really just left my mouse cursor chilling in the middle of this footage, huh? I'm not saying that the new cast was bad, actually I did like them. And I'm not saying that I need every single VA back to be satisfied. But to see that they at least make some sort of an effort would mean the world. So yeah, Paul Castro, Griffin Burns, Miranda Parkin, and the rest are totally totally reprising their roles if I have anything to say about it. Recently, Funimation did get absorbed into Crunchyroll, and I'm not gonna pretend like I have a clue what that will mean for Funimation's productions and dubbings, but I want to hope that it can lead to some sort of shakeup in management that can get us our original voices back. You know, in the event that Square sees this video, hates it, and removes me from the project, which they would never. Also, I could maybe do with a new voice director. This is not to knock on the first season's director. Again, they did a fine job, but they did totally cast Kaguya's original voice actor for the anime, seemingly out of pure luck, and then proceeded to not direct him to actually do Kaguya's voice. Like, I can tell it's the same actor, it just sounds a bit like he's playing a different character. That might just be a me thing though. But the one person I will vouch hard to return from the dubbing staff is the localizer and scriptwriter Jessica Slias. Her version of the script was probably 90% of the reason I enjoyed the dub as much as I did, the other 10% being Naku and Sho's new voices, because I won't lie, they were pretty good. She would go out of her way to add in lore not explained in the original script, or integrate characters' battle dialogue from the games into their fights in the anime. It was really cool, and I would love to see her do Neo's script as well. And with that, I think we've covered just about everything that I had to say. Thank you for watching me ramble on about something that may or may not even actually happen. Also, shout out to Zeta Slow for cameoing as the voice of Square Enix. If you aren't already subscribed to him, fix that. Please. He's also like really close to 1,000 subs. Come on, I know you guys can make it happen. And now I turn the discussion to y'all. What would you want to see in a Neo The World Ends With You, the animation? What changes from how things operate in the first season do you want to see? What changes in Neo's story would you make in an adaptation? Let me know in the comments. And hey, the first season's existence was apparently a catalyst for Neo even starting development. So maybe Neo's anime could do the same thing again and get us a third game. Only time will tell. I'll be watching.